The wedding wasn't even supposed to be that big of a deal. At least, that's what I told myself when I RSVP'd. Just another event. Just another weekend. But the moment I stepped into the venue, this polished, overdone vineyard estate with white roses hanging from every surface and string quartets playing pop songs like it was the 1800s, I felt that familiar knot twist in my stomach. I scanned the crowd and spotted him immediately. Ethan, standing near the groom, adjusting his cufflinks, laughing at something one of the bridesmaids said. He looked good. Clean-shaven, a perfect fade, the kind of dark navy suit that made his shoulders look broader and his jaw sharper. He didn't see me, not yet. Thank God. I walked faster toward the check-in table, doing my best to act like I wasn't already regretting showing up. The thing is, Ethan and I have history. Not dramatic, screaming match history. No, ours was the quieter kind. The almost kind. The maybe in another life kind. We met back in college, both of us trying to survive a brutal marketing class that neither of us had any business being in. We ended up doing a group project together, which somehow turned into beers, which turned into weekly hangouts, which turned into years of friendship. And maybe more than that. At least, I thought so. But Ethan never made a move, never crossed the line. And I never had the guts to ask him why. We were close, ridiculously close, but it always stopped right at the edge. There were moments, sure. Glances that lasted too long. Inside jokes no one else understood. That one time he almost kissed me on the balcony of our friend's party, but didn't. Then, after college, life happened. New cities, new jobs. We texted less, saw each other even less, until last month when I got a call out of nowhere. Hey man, it's Ethan. Derek's getting married, and one of his groomsmen dropped out last minute. He's panicking. I told him you'd be perfect. Perfect. Right. I agreed, of course. Because saying no to Ethan has never been my strong suit. And now, here I was, in a rented suit, surrounded by people I barely knew, standing in the shadow of the guy the first used to imagine a future with. Liam? Someone called. I turned. It was Derek, the groom, smiling ear to ear. You made it? Man, thank you, seriously. I owe you. No worries, I said, forcing a smile. Ethan told me you two were close in school. I'm glad he called you. You really saved my ass. Close. Sure. Derek clapped me on the shoulder and pointed me toward the rest of the guys getting ready near the bar. I made my way over, trying not to look directly at Ethan. Liam, he said when I got close. His voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still familiar, still too easy to fall into. Hey, I said. It came out quieter than I meant. He gave me that crooked smile, the one that used to mess me up in college. Didn't think you'd actually come. Yeah, well, hard to say no when you basically volunteered me. He laughed. True. We stood there, just the two of us, like it hadn't been nearly 2 years since we'd last seen each other. You look good, he said. That threw me. Thanks. So do you. And for a second, we just looked at each other, like we were remembering something neither of us was saying. Then one of the other groomsmen shouted something, and the moment was gone. As we lined up for photos, Ethan took his place right next to Derek. The best man, of course. Always the best man. The guy everyone loved. The guy who always knew the right thing to say. And me? I was 2 people down from him, smiling when I was supposed to, blending in. The backup. The one you only call when someone else bails. The rehearsal dinner was worse than I expected. Everyone was charming in that very wedding weekend way. A mix of over-friendliness, alcohol, and small talk that meant nothing. Every conversation felt like a loop. How do you know Derek? Where are you from? Did you meet your +1 here? I didn't have a +1. I ended up seated next to a couple from Florida who'd just gotten engaged. They kept whispering to each other between bites of overcooked salmon, and I kept nodding like I wasn't painfully aware of how alone I looked. I told myself I didn't care. Except I did. From across the room, I could see Ethan holding court at his table, the center of attention without even trying. He was good at that, always had been. He knew how to make people feel comfortable, how to find the one joke that made even the most uptight person relax. I watched him raise a glass in a toast to the couple sitting next to him, and felt something sharp twist in my gut. He hadn't come over to talk to me again since our awkward greeting earlier. I told myself that made sense. He was the best man. He had duties, speeches, seating charts, all that. Still, I couldn't help but notice he'd had time to chat with just about everyone else in the room. After dinner, people started drifting out to the fire pit area near the vineyard. Drinks in hand, coats thrown over shoulders. I hung back, half thinking I'd call it a night, but then I heard my name. Liam. That voice again. His voice. I turned. Ethan stood behind me, his tie loosened, wine glass in hand, looking like he hadn't aged a day. His eyes crinkled a little when he smiled. You disappearing again? Thinking about it, I said. Not really in the mood for charades and s'mores. He laughed. Yeah, I forgot Derek goes full camp counselor once he's tipsy. I raised an eyebrow. Is he tipsy already? He had 2 glasses during dinner. You know how he gets. We stood there for a second, the noise of the others drifting through the open doors behind us. The way Ethan looked at me then, it wasn't quite intense, but it was focused, like he was deciding whether to say something important. You got a minute? He asked. I shrugged. Sure. He nodded toward the side path leading away from the main crowd. I followed him out past the trimmed hedges and white lanterns. We walked in silence for a bit, the gravel crunching under our dress shoes. Eventually, we stopped near the back fence of the property, a quiet spot overlooking a small drop-off into the vineyards. Figured it'd be quieter out here, he said, sipping his wine. Didn't think you'd come this weekend. You said that already. I know. I guess I'm still surprised. I didn't say anything. He looked down at his glass. We haven't really talked since. Since your birthday. I finished for him. The last time we'd seen each other, almost 2 years ago now. A party at some rooftop bar in downtown LA, drinks flowing, music loud, and the 2 of us slipping away to the balcony when it got too crowded. We'd stood close that night, closer than usual. He'd leaned in, almost like he was going to kiss me. But then someone opened the balcony door, and the moment passed. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. Since then. I figured you were done, I said. We kind of stopped texting. You didn't respond to the last few I sent. He winced. I know, that's on me. Why'd you stop? He opened his mouth, closed it again. Then, I don't know, I got busy, work picked up. I started seeing someone for a while. My chest tightened. Right. It wasn't serious, he added quickly. I mean, not really. It didn't last. I looked away, toward the rows of grapevines sloping down into the darkness. The wind picked up a little, carrying the faint scent of eucalyptus and smoke from the fire pit. You didn't have to ghost me, you know. I'm not a jealous ex. I wasn't even your— I know, he interrupted. I didn't mean to ghost you. Then what did you mean to do? He didn't answer right away. He swirled the wine in his glass like it held the answer. Honestly, I think I didn't know how to deal with it. With what? With us. That pulled me up short. I turned back to face him. I mean, he continued, whatever it was we were. I knew what I felt around you wasn't. Nothing. But I also didn't know if I was reading it wrong, and I didn't want to screw it up. I laughed, but it didn't come out the way I wanted. Too late. He looked genuinely hurt. I know, and I'm sorry. For a long second we stood there, the words hanging between us like fog. You're the best man, I said eventually, not even sure why. He nodded. Yeah. And I'm the guy you called because someone else bailed. That's not why I called you, isn't it? He took a step closer. No, I mean, yes, Derek needed someone. But I could have called anyone. I called you. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it. The guilt, the uncertainty, maybe even something else. Why now? I asked. Why say this now, after all this time? Because seeing you again made it worse, he admitted. I thought maybe it'd be fine, that we could just be friends again. Or at least fake it for a weekend. But it's not. Not fine? He shook his head slowly. Not even close. I didn't know what to say to that. My heart was racing in a way that felt familiar and stupid and dangerous. Part of me wanted to tell him off. Another part wanted to grab his face and kiss him right there in the dark. Instead, I shoved my hands in my pockets. You still seeing anyone? He asked suddenly, his voice soft. No, I said. Not for a while. We stood there in the dark for a few more seconds before someone called Ethan's name from the patio. I should go, he said, but he didn't move. Yeah, he hesitated again. Can we talk later? Like, really talk? I nodded once, not trusting myself to say more. He touched my arm as he passed me. Barely anything, just fingers grazing against my jacket sleeve, but it left a trail of heat that didn't fade even after he was gone. I stayed there a little longer, alone in the dark, listening to the faint sounds of celebration in the distance. And I realized, for the first time in a long time, that maybe I wasn't as over him as I thought. The next morning was one of those wedding weekend hangovers where everyone's pretending they're fine. Sunglasses indoors, greasy breakfast sandwiches from the hotel lobby, lots of forced laughter, and God, I'm too old for this jokes. I avoided the group as much as I could. I ate alone in the corner of the hotel's breakfast area, nursing a coffee that tasted like disappointment, and watching couples stumble in wearing matching flannel pajamas. Ethan wasn't there. I wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. Around noon, I got a text. Ethan, you free to walk for a bit? I stared at it longer than I needed to, debating if I should just leave him on read the way he'd done to me, but my fingers moved before my brain could stop them. Me. Yeah. Where? Ethan. Back trail behind the chapel. Meet me there? 10 minutes later, I was walking up the gravel path behind the wedding venue, the one we'd be standing in front of in less than 5 hours, watching Derek and Julie say their vows. The trail twisted into the trees, quiet and cool under the shade of the oaks. I found Ethan sitting on a bench overlooking the small lake. He looked up when he heard me approach. Hey, he said. I nodded, stuffing my hands in my hoodie pocket. Morning. We sat there for a while in silence. The lake shimmered in the sun, and birds chirped in the way they always seem to when you're trying to ignore emotional tension. I didn't sleep much, he said eventually. Yeah, me either. I kept thinking about what I said last night. I glanced at him. Which part? He exhaled slowly. All of it. I've been carrying this for a while, man. Not just guilt. It's more than that. I waited. He turned toward me, his elbows on his knees, brow furrowed. You were always more than just a friend to me. You know that, right? Didn't feel like it when you disappeared. I know, he said quickly. And I deserved that. I screwed up. I got scared. Everything it wasn't exactly simple. No, I agreed. It wasn't, but I was there. I showed up. I stayed. He nodded slowly. You did. More silence. The breeze picked up, rustling the trees around us. I could feel the heat starting to creep in, but the shade held it back for now. We both stared out at the water like it had answers we were too scared to say out loud. I think I loved you, he said finally. It came out so quiet I almost didn't hear it. But once I did, the words sat between us, heavy and unshakable. Think? I asked. He looked up, met my eyes. Okay, I know I did. I couldn't handle it then. I didn't know how to be that person. I'd never even let myself think I could feel that way about a guy. And then you just made everything feel so easy. Like it was normal. Because it was. I know that now, he said. I didn't then. I wanted to be mad at him. Honestly, I thought I was. But looking at him now, really looking, I didn't see the guy who ghosted me. I saw the guy the first used to share midnight snacks with in our apartment. The guy who once drove 6 hours just to help me move after a breakup. The guy who almost kissed me on a balcony and probably wanted to but didn't know how. It still hurt, I said. You disappearing. I know. You could have told me. I wouldn't have pushed you. I was pushing myself enough, he said. And then I thought maybe if I just cut it off, it'd go away, that the feelings would fade. But they didn't. I sat back against the bench, letting that settle. "So what now?" I asked. Ethan laughed softly, more to himself than to me. "That's the part one haven't figured out. I mean, we're at a wedding. It's Derek's big day. You're probably leaving tomorrow. And I'm here with all this stuff I should have said 2 years ago." "Better late than never," I offered, half joking. He turned to me again, face serious. "I don't expect anything. I'm not asking for a second chance. I just wanted you to know. I owed you that." I studied him for a second, then nodded. "Thank you for saying it." "Do you think," he started, then paused. "Do you think there's any part of you that still feels that way?" It was a fair question. One I didn't know how to answer right away. "Yeah," I said after a moment. "There's a part of me that never stopped." He swallowed, eyes dropping to his hands. "That scares me." "Me too." We didn't kiss. We didn't hug. We just sat there, both of us knowing that something had shifted. Not fully resolved, but changed. Eventually, we stood and walked back toward the venue. The rest of the afternoon blurred into the usual chaos. Tuxedos, photos, people running around with flowers and clipboards. Ethan and I stayed close, but didn't talk much. We didn't need to. By the time we were lined up under the flower arch for the ceremony, I glanced down the row and saw him glance back at me. Just a second. Just enough. When the music started and the bride appeared, everyone turned to watch her walk down the aisle. Everyone except Ethan. He looked at me, and I looked back. And somehow, I knew this story wasn't over yet. Weddings are strange. No matter how many you go to, there's always that moment when the music swells and everyone stands and turns. The hush, the expectation, the collective breath held. And then, just like that, it's not about anyone else, it's about them. Derek and Julie stood there under a canopy of white roses, sunlight hitting just right, the kind of golden glow you usually only see in movies. They were beaming, fully locked in. Completely oblivious to the fact that 5 people down, I was having a slow, quiet panic attack. I should have been focused on the ceremony, the vows, the way Julie's voice trembled when she said, "always." The way Derek looked like he might cry but held it together. Instead, my thoughts were stuck in a loop. Ethan looked at me during the processional, not the bride. Me. And it wasn't a glance. It was that same look I'd seen years ago. The one that had always stopped, just short of becoming something more. The difference now? He wasn't looking away. I shifted my stance, clasping my hands tighter in front of me, trying to focus on anything else. The grass underfoot, the way one of the flower arrangements was slowly wilting in the heat. How the minister mispronounced cherish. But all it took was another glance down the row to find Ethan already watching me again. It was subtle. No one else would have noticed. But I did. After the ceremony, things moved fast. There were group photos in the courtyard, drinks flowing like a faucet, and a never-ending line of strangers congratulating each other as if they'd all won something. I tried to blend in, nodding, smiling, pretending I wasn't desperately scanning for Ethan in every crowd. I finally found him outside the reception hall just before the dinner started. He was leaning against a column, tie already loosened, sleeves rolled halfway up, a bottle of water in one hand, and a kind of restless energy clinging to him. "You good?" I asked, walking up. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the same nerves in his expression that I felt crawling under my skin. "Yeah," he said. "Just needed a second." I nodded and leaned next to him, our shoulders a breath apart. "I meant what I said earlier," he added. "About you. About everything. I know. And I know the timing's shit. I know it's not fair." "You're right," I said. "It's not." That hung in the air between us, weighty and unresolved. "I never wanted you to be a backup," he said, quieter this time. I turned to look at him. "But I was. Maybe in the past, but not now." And what exactly is now, Ethan? A conversation behind a column during someone else's wedding? A look during vows that aren't ours? He didn't flinch. Now is me finally being honest. I spent years convincing myself you were just a phase one didn't understand. A best friend I was too attached to. Someone I'd outgrow once I figured myself out. And did you? I asked. No, he said. That's the thing. I didn't outgrow you. If anything, I've been dragging you behind me all this time, like a suitcase I refused to open. That stopped me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. You're not the same, he continued. You're calmer, more confident. It's different being around you now. Like I can finally see what I missed. I looked away. You missed a lot. I know. And I'm not looking to be someone's. Try again. I'm not waiting for someone to finally be ready. He nodded. I wouldn't ask you to. Then what are you asking? He hesitated. I'm asking if you'd sit next to me during dinner, not at the groomsman table. With me. I blinked. You mean... I already talked to Derek. He said it's fine. I didn't want to go through the next few hours pretending. Not after what I said. Part of me wanted to say no, just on principle. But the truth was, I didn't want to sit 2 seats away from him all night. I didn't want to fake laugh at the best man speech. I didn't want to catch his eye across the room and wonder what we could have said if we'd been braver. So I nodded. Okay, we walked in together, subtle but not secret. I caught the look from the planner as she frantically adjusted name cards, but I didn't care. Ethan pulled out a chair for me, a small, almost ridiculous gesture, and sat down beside me. Dinner passed in a blur. The toasts, the clinking glasses, the shared dessert fork Ethan offered me when they ran out of plates. And all through it, something had shifted. We weren't performing. We weren't avoiding. We were just there, next to each other. Finally, as the DJ kicked off the first dance, Ethan leaned toward me, his voice just above the music. You know they're gonna ask you to dance eventually. Doubt it, I said. I'm not exactly in the wedding party rotation. Still, I dance with you, he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You don't dance. Not usually, but for you? I stared at him. The music swelled. The lights dimmed. All around us, couples were swaying, camera phones raised, champagne flutes full. And Ethan sitting next to me with that same calm, serious look he always had when he meant something. He waited. I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. I stood, and so did he. We didn't go to the middle of the floor. Just the edge. Just enough. He put one hand at my waist, the other brushing against my shoulder. We swayed. Awkward at first, then easier, slower, more real. No one really noticed us. Or if they did, they didn't care. And for the first time since college, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a backup story. Maybe it was just late, but still happening. Later that night, after the dancing, after the bouquet toss, after too many cocktails and even more awkward small talk, the reception began to thin out. The older guests left first, then the parents, then the bridal party began to break off into hotel rooms and ride shares, heels in hand, suits rumpled, ties loosened or gone completely. Ethan and I stayed. It wasn't really planned. We just kept drifting from one quiet corner of the venue to another, the way two people do when they're not ready to go their separate ways. He stole a couple of mini bottles of champagne from the bar before it shut down, and we found ourselves sitting on the low stone wall behind the venue, looking out over the empty vineyard. You remember junior year? He asked, handing me one of the bottles. Which part? The road trip to San Diego. We left in the middle of the night, convinced we'd see the sunrise from the beach. I laughed. Yeah, and then your radiator gave out in Bakersfield, and we ended up sleeping in the car, sweating our asses off. He smiled. Still worth it. We were quiet again, sipping champagne that tasted like Sprite and metal. Crickets chirped in the distance. A breeze stirred through the vines, and for a second, it felt like college all over again. Two idiots with no plan, nothing but time, no idea how fragile that kind of closeness could be. "You were always it, you know," he said suddenly. I looked over at him. "I mean it," he went on. "Even when I dated girls. Even when I tried to tell myself I just loved you as a friend. You were always the thing I compared everyone else to." "You're late to that realization," I said, not unkindly. "I know, but I'm here now." "That's not nothing," I said, then took a sip. "But it's not everything, either." He nodded. "Fair." Another pause. We were good at those. Silence had always felt comfortable between us. The kind where things didn't need to be said to be understood. But this one felt different. It hummed with potential, like we were standing at the edge of something, both of us unsure if we were about to step forward or retreat. "You flying out tomorrow?" he asked. "Yeah, morning flight." "You want to grab breakfast before you go?" I raised an eyebrow. "That depends. Are we pretending none of this happened? Or are we continuing whatever this is?" Ethan turned to face me fully. "I'm not pretending anymore. I'm done running." I studied him. His face in the moonlight looked older, softer. Not the boy I used to know. Not the man who disappeared. Something in between. A bridge between then and now. "Okay," I said. "Breakfast." He smiled, but there was something deeper behind it. Not just relief. Something closer to hope. We sat a little longer, talking about nothing. Inside jokes. Work. Dumb things from our 20s. Then we walked back to the hotel together. Slowly. Not touching, not saying much, just walking side by side like we had so many times before. At the elevator, there was a beat of hesitation. "My room's just down the hall," he said. I nodded. "Mine's upstairs." He looked at me like he was trying to figure out what the right move was. Like he didn't want to screw up this moment, but also didn't want to let it pass. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Not tonight, I didn't want to go to bed without saying goodnight." "Okay," I said, my voice lower than I meant. We stood there, both of us reluctant to be the first to turn away. He reached out, brushed his hand against mine, barely touching, just a soft slide of skin against skin. "Night, Liam," he said. "Night, Ethan." And then the elevator opened, and I stepped inside, heart thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The doors closed slowly, but he didn't look away. I didn't either. Back in my room, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I thought about that almost kiss on the balcony, about all the years between then and now, about how many versions of this story we might have lived if things had gone differently. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like someone's backup plan. I felt like a page someone had been waiting to turn. I woke up before my alarm the next morning. Not because I was well rested, I definitely wasn't, but because my mind wouldn't shut off. That conversation, those looks, the way Ethan had said goodnight like it meant something. I stared at the hotel ceiling, sunlight creeping through the badly drawn curtains, and asked myself the same question I'd been avoiding for years. What if? What if I'd told him how I felt sooner? What if I'd pushed harder when he pulled away? What if we'd kissed that night on the balcony instead of choking on silence? But now, the better question was, what if it wasn't too late? I checked my phone. No messages. Then, just as I was about to toss it aside, it vibrated in my hand. "Ethan, you still up for breakfast?" I didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen, heart thudding way too fast for such a simple message. Then I typed back, "Me, just getting dressed. Meet in the lobby? Ethan, already here." I should have known he'd be early. He always was when it came to things he cared about. Trips, work, being there for people. Maybe that's what confused me the most back then. How someone so reliable could disappear when it mattered most. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, ran a hand through my hair, and headed down to the lobby. He was sitting in the corner by the window. No suit now. Just a plain black t-shirt, joggers, and sneakers. He looked good. Too good for this early in the morning. When he saw me, he stood. "Hey." "Morning." We walked out of the hotel into the cool morning air. Everything was quiet, like the whole town was still asleep, which it probably was. We found a little diner a block away, one of those places that still had booths with torn vinyl and waitresses who called you honey without irony. Ethan ordered pancakes. I went for eggs and toast, mostly because my stomach was too anxious for anything sweet. For the first few minutes, we talked about the wedding, the way Derek cried during his vows, how Julie's little cousin dropped the ring and sent the entire front row into a quiet panic. It was easy, familiar, but I could feel the shift coming. The part where the small talk ended and the real questions began. He took a sip of his coffee and set the mug down slowly. "So, what happens now?" I looked at him. "You tell me." "I meant it last night," he said, "about not running, about wanting to figure this out." I nodded. "I know I hurt you. I know I lost your trust. And I don't expect you to forget that just because I finally got my act together." I waited. "But I also can't pretend I don't still feel something. I've tried. Believe me. I've dated. I've distracted myself. I've convinced myself I'd moved on. But every time I thought I had, something would remind me of you. A song, a smell, someone making a dumb pun the way you used to. And I'd get that same feeling in my chest. That ache." My breath hitched a little, but I didn't say anything. He leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to jump back in. I'm asking for a chance. To get to know you again. To show you I've changed." I set my fork down, wiped my hands on a napkin. "You really think we can go back to what we were?" "No," he said quickly. "I don't want to go back. I want something better." I studied him. "You still live in LA. I'm in Denver. What does that even look like?" "We figure it out," he said. "One step at a time. And if we try this and it falls apart, then at least we'll know we tried," he said. "And that we didn't let fear decide for us again." I looked down at my plate. My eggs were cold. My heart was not. "I'm still mad," I said. "Still hurt." He nodded. "You should be. But I hesitated. "I don't want to keep wondering what we could have been. Not if there's a chance to actually find out." Ethan didn't say anything, just reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. His touch was warm, steady, real. We sat like that for a while. No declarations, no big promises, just the quiet weight of something beginning again. After breakfast, we walked back to the hotel. I still had to pack, still had a flight to catch, but the air between us wasn't tight anymore. It felt like possibility. In the lobby, I turned to him. "I'm not waiting another 2 years for the next move," I said. "You won't have to," he said. "You'll hear from me tonight, tomorrow. After that, you better mean that." "I do," he said. "I've meant it for a long time. I just didn't know how to say it until now." We stood there for a second, and I could feel it, that same old pull between us, but different now. Clearer, no longer buried in fear or timing or excuses. "I'll see you soon," he said. "Yeah," I said. "You will." The plane ride home was quiet. I'd brought a book but didn't open it. Stared out the window most of the time, replaying everything. The look on Ethan's face when he said I was never just a backup, the way his fingers brushed against mine in the diner, that quiet moment in the elevator when neither of us said what we were both feeling. But everything had already shifted. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel on the flight back. Closure, maybe. Regret, possibly. But the feeling that settled in my chest somewhere over the Rockies wasn't either of those. It was something closer to hope. When I got home, I tossed my suitcase in the corner of my apartment and collapsed on the couch, still wearing my travel clothes, scrolling aimlessly on my phone just to avoid unpacking. My head was buzzing with what to say, what to expect, how to navigate whatever this was going to be. Then, 2 hours after I landed, I got a message. "Ethan, home safe?" I smiled like an idiot, which, honestly, was a nice change of pace. "Me? Yeah. Couch mode activated. You?" Ethan, just landed, got delayed. Figured I'd still beat you to texting first. Me, a man of his word. Ethan, trying to be. He sent a follow-up almost immediately. Ethan, can I call? Me, give me 3 minutes. Need water and dignity. Ethan, you don't need dignity with me. That made me laugh. God, I missed that. The easy teasing. The way he always knew when to dial things back just enough to make me breathe again. I grabbed a glass of water, then flopped back down and called him. Hey, he said, picking up on the second ring. His voice was a little raspy, tired, but real. Hey, I echoed, settling deeper into the cushions. How's Denver? Exactly the same. Cold, quiet. My apartment smells like laundry detergent and regret. He laughed. Sounds familiar. LA still sunny and fake? Wouldn't be LA if it wasn't. There was a small pause. The kind that used to be awkward, but now felt warm. I'm glad you picked up, he said. I'm glad you called. I wasn't sure if I should. I didn't want to seem pushy. You spent most of yesterday telling me how you weren't going to run anymore. Seems a little backwards to stop talking now. Fair point, he said. So, can I see you again? Like soon? I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to. I did. Desperately. But logistics were real. So were wounds that hadn't totally healed. Soonish, I said. Let's not rush this into something it's not. Let it grow on its own, yeah? He was quiet for a second. Then, yeah, I can do that. Maybe you come here first, I added. If you want. My schedule's lighter this month, and it'd be easier for me to not think you're bailing if I'm the one you flew to. I'd like that, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We talked for almost an hour. Not about anything profound, just stupid things. Old TV shows, new music, how neither of us could believe Derek was married now. But it felt like stepping back into something I hadn't realized I'd missed so badly. We ended the call with no dramatic goodbye, just a simple talk soon and the click of silence. That was the start of it. Over the next few weeks, we talked constantly. Texted daily, sometimes short messages, a song lyric, a photo, a dumb meme that reminded him of something I said 3 years ago. Other times, full phone calls that stretched until one of us had to fake being responsible and hang up. He booked his trip to Denver. A weekend. Nothing crazy. Just Friday to Monday. Enough time to not feel like a rush job. Enough space to test the waters without drowning. When he arrived, I picked him up from the airport. He came through the terminal wearing a hoodie and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, looking like he'd walked straight out of one of those airport reunion scenes from a movie. Except this wasn't a movie. It was just us. We didn't kiss. We didn't even hug right away. But when he got in the car and our eyes met again, that was enough. I missed this, he said as we pulled out of the parking lot. Which part? You. Being near you. I didn't say anything, just smiled and turned up the music. That weekend was slow and easy. We walked around the city, had drinks at my favorite bar, stayed in and cooked once, which was a disaster, but he looked unfairly good, laughing with flour on his nose. We didn't talk about the past much. We didn't need to. What mattered was how we felt now. The first kiss happened Saturday night. We were watching some terrible action movie, sitting way too close on the couch, both pretending we were comfortable when neither of us was. At one point, I turned to say something, a joke, maybe, and he kissed me before I could get the words out. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't planned. Just soft and sure. His hand at my jaw, his mouth tasting faintly of the whiskey we'd been sipping. And for the first time since all of this started, I stopped thinking, because there was nothing left to question. He pulled back first, eyes searching mine. That okay? I nodded. Yeah, more than okay. We didn't do anything else that night. Just stayed on the couch, arms tangled, movie still playing in the background. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this thing that had almost happened 1,000 times before was finally starting to become real. Sunday morning came slow and quiet. Ethan was still asleep on my couch, his hoodie pulled up halfway over his face, one leg hanging off the cushion like he didn't quite fit. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee, watching him like an idiot. It was surreal. This moment, this version of us, him here, really here, not as a maybe, not as a what if, but as someone who had come back on purpose, who had booked a flight, who had told me what he felt, and then kept showing up to prove it. I carried 2 mugs over and nudged his foot. "Morning," I said. He groaned and sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "You trying to poison me with caffeine?" "That's the plan." He took the mug and looked at me. "Thanks for this, for letting me come." "Of course," I said. "It's not like I was gonna let you flake out twice." That made him smile, which, as always, hit me harder than I expected. We sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee and listening to the radiator clink in the background. Then he said it. "I don't want to leave tomorrow." It was quiet, unassuming, but heavy. "You don't have to," I said carefully. "We can figure something out, see each other more. Take turns visiting." He shook his head. I don't want us to be just something we try on weekends." I waited. "I've been thinking," he continued. "I've been freelancing more, working remote half the time. There's no real reason I couldn't spend some time here. At least try it out." "You're seriously thinking about moving?" He hesitated. "Not full-time, not yet, but splitting time, starting with a month here. Then we see." I looked at him, at the guy who'd vanished on me, the guy I'd grieved, resented, and never quite stopped hoping for. And now he was offering more than just feelings. He was offering something tangible, something real. "You sure you're not just trying to make up for lost time?" I asked. "I'm trying to make things right," he said. "And yeah, I've got a lot to make up for, but I'm not rushing anything. I just know that I want to be around you more. I want to see what this looks like when we're not just dancing around it." There was a time when hearing him say something like that would have felt like too little, too late. But now, it felt like the first time someone really saw me. I leaned back, took a sip of coffee, and nodded. "Okay," I said. "Let's try it." His shoulders dropped like he'd been holding his breath. That night, we cooked dinner again. This time, successfully. Chicken and pasta and too much wine. We ate on the floor, sitting on pillows like college students. Afterward, we fell asleep in my bed, limbs tangled like we were afraid to let go. When I dropped him off at the airport Monday morning, we didn't make it dramatic. No big tearful goodbye, just a long hug, a few quiet words. "Text me when you land." "I will." And then he kissed me once, quick and sure, right there outside security. He looked back only once before disappearing around the corner. The weeks that followed didn't feel like a movie montage. There were awkward moments, scheduling messes, a few hard conversations. But there was also progress, real effort, calls every night, plans for visits, shared calendars, photos of dumb things we saw that reminded us of each other. When he came back a month later, for that trial run in Denver, he brought 2 bags and 1 small box of books. We didn't call it moving in, but we didn't call it temporary either. It was just something beginning, something we both stepped into without pretending it was perfect. But we were honest. And honest was more than we'd ever had before. Sometimes I still think about that wedding, how I stood in the shadow of the man I thought I'd lost, watching him give a speech I couldn't hear because I was too busy remembering everything we weren't. And how somehow that same man found his way back to me, not because someone else dropped out, not because he needed a placeholder, but because he finally understood what he wanted. And maybe I wasn't his first plan, but I was the plan he chose, not the backup, the beginning.